The bird opening is one of chess's most underrated weapons, starting with f4. It instantly takes control of the e5 square and sets the stage for creative, attacking play. Hardly anyone plays it at the top level. I mean, if you're facing someone like Magnus Carlsen, this probably isn't the best idea. But for club or online play, it works perfectly fine. I recently checked the statistics, and it turns out that the vast majority of players facing this as black have no real idea how to respond correctly. They often make early mistakes, giving you a great chance to achieve success with this opening as white. Usually black replies with pawn to d5, which makes perfect sense. Your pawn on f4 controls the e5 square, so black can't easily push their pawn to a5 without losing it. Therefore, they choose to challenge the center with pawn to d5 instead. Now you continue with knight to f3. One of the biggest advantages of the bird opening is that you can use the same setup in almost every situation, regardless of what your opponent plays. Another huge benefit is that it naturally leads to a clear and powerful attacking plan in the middle game, allowing you to launch a strong assault on your opponent's king. Here's why I believe the bird opening is such a powerful and underrated choice for you. Most players simply aren't familiar with it. They don't study it, they don't prepare for it, and as a result, they often have no idea what to do once you play it. That lack of preparation instantly gives you an edge right from the start. After your opening move sequence, many opponents as black will try pawn to c5, attempting to fight for control over the central squares. In response, you calmly play pawn to e3, opening the diagonal for your light-squared bishop and preparing smooth development. Now, in most cases, black follows up with knight to c6, which looks natural but is actually slightly inaccurate. It's not a blunder, it doesn't lose immediately, but it allows you to respond with a very strong and thematic idea. Bishop to b5. This move puts immediate pressure on the knight at c6 and opens up some excellent attacking prospects for the future. That's why I'm not a fan of knight to c6 for black. Yet most players who have never studied the bird opening will play this move automatically. Once your bishop pins the knight, you start to gain even greater control over the key e5 square. Your knight can jump there later, exerting extra pressure and coordinating beautifully with your other pieces. You don't have to rush into that move, just knowing that the option exists gives you flexibility and a long-term attacking plan. Altogether, this setup already begins to create dangerous attacking chances for white, even before the middle game has fully begun. Usually black tries to free their position by developing the bishop to d7, but by that point, you've already built up the kind of pressure that most players won't be ready to handle. Now you continue with pawn to b3, which is another excellent and strategic idea. It's quite clear that your dark squared bishop on c1 is currently rather passive. It's blocked by your own pawns, limiting its influence along its original diagonal. To solve this, you want to reroute that bishop and develop it along a much stronger diagonal. By playing pawn to b3, you prepare to fianchetto your dark squared bishop to b2, where it will suddenly become an extremely active and powerful piece. From that new position, your bishop will control the long diagonal stretching all the way toward the king side. And assuming that black castles kingside, which is what most players will do, your dark squared bishop will later aim directly at the black king, creating serious attacking potential. Another reason I love the move pawn to b3 at this stage is that it can often transpose into the same types of positions you would get if you had played pawn to b3 as your very first move, an opening I've personally always been fond of. So, by playing pawn to b3 and then bishop to b2, you not only activate your bishop, but also reach familiar and comfortable structures that are strategically sound and full of attacking chances. At this point, black often plays pawn to a6, which is yet another sign that your opponent likely doesn't fully understand the theory behind the bird opening. The idea behind this move is usually to question your light-squared bishop on b5, but in reality, it's a bit of a waste of time. Here's why. Your light-squared bishop on b5 doesn't have many other useful squares to retreat to, and eventually you would capture on c6 anyway, since that's the most logical and active continuation. So, when black spends a move playing pawn to a6, they're essentially helping you by losing a tempo for no real reason. You simply go ahead and capture on c6, and after black recaptures with the pawn, you calmly continue with bishop to b2. Now your dark squared bishop becomes an absolute powerhouse, controlling the long diagonal and exerting pressure deep into black's position, especially toward the king side. Next, black usually develops their knight to f6, and you proceed with castling kingside to bring your king to safety and connect your rooks. From here, one of the most thematic ideas in the bird opening comes into play. You maneuver your knight to the strong central square e5. This knight on e5 becomes the heart of your position. It's well protected by your pawn on f4 and supported by your bishop on b2. It's incredibly difficult for black to dislodge it, and it dominates the center while putting pressure on several key squares in black's camp. In many cases, your knight can even capture on c6, doubling black's pawns and further weakening their structure. That's why, to avoid these problems, many opponents try to play queen to c7, hoping to defend their weaknesses and unpin themselves. But by that time, you already have a comfortable, active position full of attacking possibilities. From here, you simply continue with your smooth development by playing pawn to d3, which is a natural and important part of the bird opening setup. The idea behind this move is simple. You want to develop your queen's knight, but placing it immediately on c3 would block the diagonal for your dark squared bishop on b2. So instead, you first support your center with pawn to d3, and then you can comfortably bring your knight out to d2. Let's say black continues with a standard developing move like bishop to d6. You then play knight to d2 as planned. If black castles kingside here, interestingly, this position is already very favorable, and in many cases even winning for white, despite the fact that these are considered the mainline normal moves for black. Pretty cool, right? Before we go over the exact winning sequence, take a moment to visualize your current setup as white. This is your typical bird opening structure, and you'll play it the same way in almost every variation. Your dark squared bishop on b2 and your pawn on f4 create a strong attacking foundation. This setup gives you great control over the center and opens up pathways for your queen or rook to slide toward the king side, allowing you to coordinate an attack against the black king once it castles. That's your main middle game plan, slowly bringing more of your pieces toward the king side to build up attacking pressure. In some cases, you can even push your pawn to g4 to launch a more direct assault, though that's usually reserved for sharper positions. Now, in this particular setup, you already have a nearly decisive attack. The key sequence starts with exchanging on c6, which opens up the long diagonal for your dark squared bishop. After that, you capture on f6, breaking apart the black kingside pawn structure and exposing the black king to your powerful bishops and attacking pieces. From there, your attack practically plays itself. A perfect example of why the bird opening can be such a deadly and underrated weapon. At this point, you continue the attack with queen to h5, bringing your queen closer to the black king and into the heart of the attack. Your plan is simple. Play rook to f3, then swing the rook to g3 or h3, depending on where the pressure is strongest. It's a straightforward yet deadly idea, and black has almost no proper defense. If black tries king to h8, you still play rook to f3, preparing the lift to g3 or h3 for a quick checkmate. Their only other try is rook to g8, but that fails immediately because the g7 pawn is left unprotected. You simply take it with queen takes g7, and their position collapses. Your queen now threatens both e6 and f6, and you can bring your rook to h3, creating unstoppable mating threats. By this stage, black's defense is shattered. You're attacking powerfully, up material, and completely dominating the board. A perfect demonstration of how dangerous the bird opening can be when played confidently.